I'd like to call to order the July 13th meeting of the James City County Chesapeake Bay Board. There is no Wetlands Board meeting tonight. Mr. Wilson, can we have a roll call, please?
Yes, sir. Mr. Roadley.
Here.
Mr. Waltrip.
Here.
Mr. O'Brien.
Here.
Mr. May.
Here.
Mr. Gussman.
Here. The responsibility of this board is to carry out locally the Commonwealth policy to protect against and minimize pollution and deposition of sediment in wetlands, streams, and lakes in James City County, which are tributaries of the Chesapeake Bay. We are going to skip the approval of the minutes. There's been some issues with the minutes, and we requested the staff to go back and review the board meeting and rewrite the minutes. So minutes will be skipped. We'll go directly to public hearings. The outline for tonight's public hearings includes staff presentations followed by any questions or clarifications from the board. Then the public hearings will be opened. At that time, anybody wishing to speak may do so once called upon by the chair. All public speakers must state their name and address for the record. After everyone wishing to speak have done so, the public hearing will be closed and discussion among the board will start. Our first case tonight is CBPA 22-0076, 3200 Derby Lane.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Trevor Long, James City County Watershed Planner, here to present CBPA-22-0076. Ms. Carla Havens of Mid-Atlantic Resource Consulting has applied for a Chesapeake Bay exception on behalf of Mr. Samuel Powell for encroachments into the RPA buffer for the construction of an upland revetment located at 3200 Derby Lane within the Drummond's Quarter on the James subdivision and the James River watershed. You can see this parcel above outlined here in blue, and the watersheds being delineated here in yellow. Total lot size of this property is 2.4 acres, of which 30% is located within the RPA. The applicant is proposing to construct a quarry stone revetment to address a shoreline erosion issue occurring on the property. A closer look at this property and the project location on the screen here. This is the property in question, and the area where the blue arrow is pointing to shall be where the quarry stone revetment will be located. Some topography from this site. As you can see, the house is further off screen, and then there is a deck and stairs that comes down this, this slope here and reaches to a beach that's formed by these breakwaters. There's area on the northwestern side of this property is experiencing undercutting and some other issues associated with the shoreline. The floodplain as it affects this property and the resource protection area stemming off of this breakwater system here. On June 8th, 2022, a wetlands permit for 3181 Derby Lane was approved by the James City County Wetlands Board, which included the construction of a revetment that interfaced the tidal range. The applicant at 3200 Derby Lane is now proposing to tie into the recently approved revetment and construct a 63 by 6 foot revetment on their property. As you can see on the site plan above, the area in the darker orange here is what was approved in last month's Wetlands Board meeting. And the applicants here at 3200 are planning to extend and tie into this revetment and bring it just about to the stairs. Total impacts to the RPA associated with the proposal equate to 378 square feet of impacts to the seaward 50-foot RPA. Required mitigation for this amount of impervious impacts equals the plantings of 1 planting unit, which is 1 canopy tree, 2 understory trees, and 3 shrubs. Because of the configuration of the existing breakwaters and the subsequent tidal range on this property, the proposed revetment is landward of mean high water. Therefore, this case is being heard by the Chesapeake Bay Board. As you can see here on the site plan, We have an indicator for the 50-foot resource protection area in red. Mean low water being the first blue dashed line, and mean high water being the second one. On the neighboring property, the revetment actually interfaces into mean high water, and on this particular property, it does not interface. A cross-section of the proposed revetment. There is an adjacent beach that will be found just beyond this revetment. And some site photographs. You can see here staked with the pink flags. This will be the area of the revetment and the slope that I was speaking of earlier. Some of the issues associated with this property. You see the scouring along the toe of the slope, extending fairly far onto the applicant's property. Staff has evaluated the application and exception request for the construction of an upland revetment. This application meets the ordinance conditions in sections 23-11 and 23-14 and should be heard by the board because the proposed construction extends into the seaward 50-foot RPA. The board may grant exceptions to section 23-7 if the application meets the following 5 conditions. The exception request is the minimum necessary to afford relief. Granting the exception will not confer upon the applicant any special privileges denied by Chapter 23, Chesapeake Bay Preservation, of the James City County Code to other property owners similarly situated in the vicinity. The exception request will be in harmony with the purpose and intent of Chapter 23 of the James City County Code and is not of substantial detriment to water quality. The exception request is not based on conditions or circumstances that are self-created or self-imposed, nor does the request arise from conditions or circumstances, either permitted or non-conforming, that are related to adjacent parcels, and that reasonable and appropriate conditions are imposed which will prevent the exception request from causing a degradation of water quality. Staff has reviewed the application and exception request and has determined the impacts associated with the proposal to be moderate for the proposed development. Staff recommends approval for this exception request, and if the board wishes to approve the request, staff recommends the following conditions be incorporated into the approval. The applicant must obtain all other necessary federal, state, and local permits as required for the project. All development activities located in the special flood hazard area shall comply with Article 6, Division 3, floodplain area regulations of the James City County zoning ordinance and receive all required approval and permits prior to commencement of such activities. The submittal of a mitigation plan equating to 1 planting unit, which is 1 canopy tree, 2 understory trees, and 3 shrubs, be submitted to the Stormwater and Resource Protection Division prior to the project start. That a surety of $500 be submitted in a form acceptable to the James City County Attorney's Office to guarantee the mitigation plantings. That this exception request approval shall become null and void if construction is not begun by July 13th, 2023, and any written request for an extension to this exception shall be submitted to the Stormwater and Resource Protection Division no later than June 1st, 2023, which is 6 weeks prior to the expiration date of this approval. Thank you very much, and I'd be happy to answer any questions the board may have.
Any questions?
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, good evening. I'm Carla Havens with Mid-Atlantic Resource Consulting, 1095 Cherry Row Lane, Shacklefords, Virginia, 23156. The Powells have no problems with the conditions of 1 unit of mitigation planning, the surety, which will be returned. And if you remember last month, the Horner bulkhead and breakwater, this is basically just a continuation and a tapering off of that revetment onto the Powell property. So that's why it's up in the landscape stuff, but it's really interesting that you have 2 neighboring properties, 2 adjacent properties, and the erosion, so erosion problems are entirely different on adjacent properties. So
We did visit this site.
I'm glad to know it, yeah. So it's basically just taking the Horner's revetment and just tapering it over to the steps of the Powells. And hopefully it'll never be a needed structure, but as sea level rises and we get crazy storms, it may be an issue. So we've decided to or to request permitting for the entire length to the stairs instead of just a small section.
Any other questions from Ms. Havens?
Just
Okay.
one question about why go all the way to the steps? Because there was no erosion over there.
You're right. For what, 3 years? And we're not sure what's going to happen in the next 3 years with what the Horners are doing on their property. So it was actually recommended that we go all the way to the stairs, from the Horner property all the way to the stairs. So that's why we are applying for that.
Okay. Great, thank you. Would anyone else like to speak on this issue?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
if I may, like to offer Ms. Havens a correction. The permit's good for 1 year. The exception request is good for 1 year. But the Powells may ask for an extension for a couple years if they, in the future, if they want to allow for that extension over to the stairs. Just wanted to make sure the Powells were clear on that.
Okay, any discussion from the board?
Looking at the project there, it does make sense to complete that run from aesthetics, and I think it would do a better job than leaving it halfway done.
Would someone like to make a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to grant with conditions the exception request for Chesapeake Bay Board case CBPA 22-0076 at 3200 Derby Lane.
Okay, we have a motion to grant the exception. Mr. Wilson, will you call the roll, please?
Yes.
Sorry, Mr. Roadley,
Yes.
Mr. Waltrip,
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien,
Yes.
Mr. May,
Yes.
Mr. Gussman.
Yes, motion carries. Okay, you have your exception. Thank you for coming out this evening. Our next case is CBPA 22-0080 for 5 Tay River.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair. Sorry, I'm waiting for the presentation to be ready. A 22-0080. Mr. Chase Grogg with Land Tech Resources has applied for a Chesapeake Bay exception on behalf of Walk Right Construction for encroachments into the RPA buffer for the construction of a single-family dwelling and patio located at 5 Tay River within the Ford's Colony subdivision and the Powhatan Creek watershed. You can see the parcel outlined here in blue, again in the Ford's Colony subdivision and the Powhatan Creek watershed. Here's aerial photography of the site. The topography at the site, which is fairly flat. Sanitary sewer line shown in yellow, going back behind the parcel and across it on the back side. The resource protection area, which comes all the way up to the front of the lot. The total lot size of this property is 0.56 property. Existing conditions on this parcel include a wooded lot and wetlands that encompass the rear. The applicant is proposing to construct a new single-family dwelling with a patio. Total impacts to the RPA associated with this proposal equate to 2,861 square feet of impacts to the landward 50-foot RPA and 1,665 square feet of impacts to the seaward 50-foot RPA, for a total of 4,526 square feet of impacts. Required mitigation for this amount of impervious impacts equals 12 planting units or 12 canopy trees, 24 understory trees, and 36 shrubs. The applicant has provided a mitigation plan equating to 4 canopy trees, 6 understory trees, and 38 shrubs, and intends to pay the remainder, showing the edge of wetlands at the rear of the lot, the 100-foot and the 50-foot RPA buffers outlined in red. In orange is the portion of the house and patio within the seaward 50-foot RPA. And in yellow is the proposed house and driveway within the landward 100-foot RPA. This red line surrounding the house is the limits of clearing. And on this slide is their proposed mitigation plan. These areas of green at the corners of the house are the areas of proposed mitigation. No infiltration measures have been proposed at this time because of the proximity to wetlands and the subsequent soils. Here is site photography standing at the entrance to this lot and looking back. Looking at the right side of the lot, here's the stake for the front corner of the home. And to the left of the lot, other corners of that side of the house. Looking towards the back of the lot, towards the wetlands. And then standing at the back of the lot, looking up towards the entrance. Staff has evaluated the application and exception request for the construction of a new single-family dwelling and patio. This application meets the ordinance conditions in section 23-11 and 23-14 and should be heard by the board because the construction of a single-family dwelling extends into the seaward 50-foot RPA and a patio is considered accessory in nature. Staff is requesting that an affidavit be required as a condition of this exception request if the board wishes to approve this request. The affidavit would ensure that potential future property owners are aware of this exception request into the RPA. The board may grant exceptions to section 23-7 if the application meets the following 5 conditions. The exception request is the minimum necessary to afford relief. Granting the exception will not confer upon the applicant any special privileges denied by Chapter 23, Chesapeake Bay Preservation of the James City County Code to other property owners similarly situated in the vicinity. The exception request will be in harmony with the purpose and intent of Chapter 23 of the James City County Code and is not of substantial detriment to water quality. The exception request is not based on conditions or circumstances that are self-created or self-imposed, nor does the request arise from conditions or circumstances, either permitted or non-conforming, that are related to adjacent parcels, and reasonable and appropriate conditions are imposed which will prevent the exception request from causing a degradation of water quality. Staff has reviewed the application and exception request and has determined the impacts associated with the proposal to be major for the proposed development. Staff recommends approval for this exception request, and if the board wishes to approve this request, staff recommends the following conditions be incorporated into the approval. The applicant must obtain all other necessary federal, state, and local permits as required for the project. All development activities located in the special flood hazard area shall comply with Article 6, Division 3, floodplain area regulations of the James City County zoning ordinance and receive all required approval and permits prior to the commencement of such activities. A surety of $6,000 be submitted in a form acceptable to the James City County Attorney's Office to guarantee the mitigation plantings. A payment of $3,000 into the Chesapeake Bay Mitigation Fund prior to the issuance of a building permit. That an affidavit be recorded in the Williamsburg, James City County Courthouse prior to the issuance of a building permit. That this exception request approval shall become null and void if construction is not begun by July 13th, 2023, with any written request for an extension to this exception submitted to the Stormwater and Resource Protection Division no later than June 1st, 2023, which is 6 weeks prior to the expiration date. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer them at this time.
There's no way to put in some kind of infiltration basin or to intercept the flow of water, getting out to the wetlands?
I will defer that question to the contractor.
Okay.
Does, many of the properties in Ford's Colony are situated such that they drain into a BMP that was constructed for the larger community itself. Is that the case in this application?
They're going to drain into the sanitary sewer line. And that limit of clearing can be shown in the site plan. Any further clarification on that, though, I will leave to the contractor.
You don't believe that this flows ultimately into an existing BMP or stormwater facility?
Not to my knowledge, but I will let the contractor clarify that.
And the rationale behind not doing was it 12 planting units that you recommended?
Yes, sir.
Only doing 3? Or
They're
something?
only doing 4 canopy trees, 6 understory trees, and 38 shrubs. And it's simply a matter of what can and can't fit on the lot.
Can you pull the diagram up again of the property and just review again, how many, what's the square footage in the seaward versus, and what's the square footage in the landward RPA?
Sure. It's 2,861 square feet in the landward and 1,665 in the seaward.
And just show us that on the diagram. I want to make sure I really understand this.
Sure. So the yellow is the landward, and again, that's 2,861 square feet. And this orange color, that's the seaward, and that's 1,665 square feet.
What about the patio? Is the patio all in the seaward?
This box here labeled patio, yes, that is all within the seaward.
Okay. Any other questions for the staff? All right. At this time, I'd like to open the public hearing. Would the applicant like to come forward and address the board?
Good evening, members of the board. Chase Grogg with Land Tech Resources, 7657 Turlington Road, Towano, Virginia. Again, another fun Forts Colony lot for us to kind of go through some of your questions. So, Mr. O'Brien, we're proposing 6 credits. Normally, the credits are 1 canopy tree, 2 understory tree, and 3 shrubs. And due to proximity and trying to get everything to fit, trying to fit 12 canopy trees on this lot is just not going to last long term. So what we have done in the past is we propose to plant half of the mitigation on site and then purchase the other half of the credits off site, which we work with staff through. So that's what we're proposing to do, 6 credits on site and the rest off site.
Just not to interrupt, but aren't you clearing everything within that kind of bubbly area?
So yes, we are clearing everything in the bubbly area. That's correct.
And that, but the stuff that you're actually planting is in the green. So the rest of it is just wide open.
Well, yes, is open area that, and so what we do in these particular instances is we list the planting, because Forts Colony has all sorts of planting requirements, and so we list what they're going to plant, and then they work with staff as well as Forts Colony on the exact location of those plantings. So knowing Forts Colony's planting requirements, they're not all going to end up exactly around the house, and will be more dispersed around. So since we're not landscape architects or stuff, in the past we used to show an extensive amount of detail with that, and we've kind of backed off on that because it causes issues down the way when they go to construct it, asking exactly where the shrubs are. So we just try and get the permission to plant the set amount of 6 credits on site with the exact location to be worked through with county staff at the time of planting. And then to answer Mr. Gussman, Mr. Rodley, I know the soils and infiltration has always come up. So we went out to this site and tried to do a boring basically right where the swales would fall. And it is some very clayey, clumpy. I could make a nice little clay house out like I was in school all over with it. So trying to do some sort of infiltration in it without any sort of under drain to release that water somewhere else was out of the question, unfortunately, for this one. And due to it being in the flood zone and with the wetlands right there, a lot of the BMP practices we would use aren't allowed in the flood zone, as well as I don't have anywhere to daylight any sort of pipe. So the water at the top of the page there is actually directed towards an existing concrete drainage ditch that's there. And then we tried to direct the water to the south there, kind of away, let it filter through those woods there, not direct it right to the wetlands. Something else I want to point out, staff didn't comment too much on, but you'll see that we're proposing some fill to the right of the property there. Since this lot, about half of the house is in the flood zone, we're currently working with staff on potentially going down the route of a Loma to potentially remove the home from the flood zone. So that's why there's a little bit of extra contours over on the side there. And I also wanted to point out the clearing into the wetlands there is just for the sanitary sewer connection. It's not some other, path or anything. The clean out just happens. The sewers always run in the bottom, which is normally through the wetlands. So that connection is purely for the sanitary sewer. I think that is, and the last thing I'll comment on is the orientation of the house. You guys know that normally I push these as close to the setbacks as I possibly can. We looked at trying to put this house parallel with that side property line, but the entire lot next to us drains right onto us. So we needed to open up that back of the house a little bit to be able to get a swale through there and get that water around to not have a bunch of water slamming against the side of our house. So that's why it is rotated the way it is. And I'm happy to answer any other questions you have.
This lot is draining directly into wetlands. It's not
That is
going
correct.
into, it's not going into any kind of BMP, which is the case with a lot of them.
That is correct. Unfortunately, this lot does drain right into the wetlands and not into any other BMP feature.
Okay. Any other questions for Mr. Grog?
I appreciate your comprehensive review of the issues.
Okay, all right.
Thank you,
Thank you
John.
very much. Would anyone else like to speak on this issue? Okay, at this time, I will close the public hearing and open it up for discussion from the board.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Grog did open his comments with a factual statement, another project in Ford's Colony that is one of the remaining lots that has lasted undeveloped for quite some time because of the constraints. In the past, we have, I think, looked at these lots and tried to come up with a reasonable accommodation to allow them to move forward with the project because they have done so, using some type of infiltration or water quality treatment to polish the stormwater that's flowing off the site. Unfortunately, in this lot, it's flat, so he doesn't have the fall difference to allow him to daylight a pipe. And the soils are such that the infiltration doesn't appear to work. I'll just remind the board that Powhatan Creek is on the DEQ impaired waters list, partially because of the urban development within the watershed. So I'm having a tough time with this one. We don't seem to have a way to mitigate the impact other than the planting of half of the required mitigation on site, and it is in the flood zone. So I'm just expressing my concerns for this one.
Well, I don't know. My philosophy's always been, not all lots are created equal. And there's a reason why this is one of the very last remaining lots in Ford's Colony. There's no way under the current law this would ever have been approved. I sort of feel like, I know everybody wants a big house, and most of the houses are very large, but I'm not sure a large, this size house is appropriate. You could possibly build a smaller house and pull it further, out of the RPA. It may not look the same as the other houses, but that's but this lot is not the same as the other lots.
Mr. Chairman, just for clarity, are you suggesting that if the house size was such that it moved it out of the seaward 50 feet, that it might be approvable?
I don't know. I could look at it more favorably if it was a considerably smaller house with less impacts. But we're talking about 1,600 square feet of impact into the seaward RPA. I think this is definitely going to have an impact on the wetlands. Some of the lots that are in the RPAs that sort of look like this, they were going into retention basins. They looked like ponds or lakes, but they were really, technically settling basins. And I figured, all right, if anything runs off, it's not going to have an impact directly onto the wetlands. It's got to get through the basin first. But this one's going directly into the wetlands. There's no buffer in between.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's just me or not, but, this case is kind of marginal. Why would you shortcut or shortchange yourself on the planning units, particularly if you don't have a place to, for drainage?
I'm not sure you can fit in the planning units on there. It's so the site is so constrained. Any other comments? All right. Does anyone want to make a motion?
Mr. Chairman, let me say that I do not feel that this exception request is in harmony with the purpose and intent of this chapter and poses, in my opinion, a substantial detriment to water quality. And on that basis, I am making a motion to deny the exception request for Chesapeake Bay Board case CBPA 22-0080 at 5 Tay River.
And I want to add that I concur with those reasons. I don't believe it's in harmony with the code, and it's going to cause impacts to water quality, and it will degrade the water quality in the wetlands. Okay, we have a motion. Can we have a roll call?
Yes, sir. Just for clarity, a yes vote is a vote to deny. Mr. Roadley,
Yes.
Mr. Waltrip,
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien,
Yes.
Mr. May,
Yes.
Mr. Gussman.
Yes. Okay. Thank you for coming out, and go take another look at it and listen to our comments. Thank you. Moving along, our next case is CBPA 22-0082, 4816 Hickory Signpost Road.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Trevor Long, James City County Watershed Planner. Mr. Chase Grogg, Landtech Resources, Inc. has applied for a Chesapeake Bay exception on behalf of Mr. and Ms. Sony Marcano for encroachments into the RPA buffer for the construction of a single-family dwelling located at 4816 Hickory Signpost Road within the Mill Creek watershed. This can be found here on the vicinity map above, outlined here in blue. Again, the Mill Creek watershed is outlined in yellow. This parcel was platted in 1970 prior to the adoption of the Chesapeake Bay Preservation Ordinance in 1990. The total lot size of this property is 0.56 acres, of which 100% is located within the RPA. On your screens is a closer look at this property. Again, you can see the creek in the differentiation of color here. The property itself was outlined in blue with topography in yellow here. As you can see, the topography is fairly flat towards the front of the lot and then drops significantly into the wetlands that are also found on the lot. Those wetlands do create resource protection area that engulfs 100% of this lot. The applicants are proposing to construct a new 550 square foot single family dwelling with a 135 square foot patio and a 20 square foot balcony. Additionally, there is a 555 square foot driveway associated with construction to accommodate for the lack of street parking on this road. Therefore, total impacts to the RPA associated with this proposal equate to 129 square feet of impacts to the landward 50-foot RPA and 1,135 square feet of impacts to the seaward 50-foot RPA for a total of 1,264 square feet. As you can see on your screen above, this is the previously submitted site plan that was heard at last month's Chesapeake Bay Board meeting. The edge of wetlands are outlined here in green. The limits of clearing are this black dashed line above. The 50-foot resource protection area coming up to just in front of the proposed house and driveway, and the 100-foot resource protection area somewhere in the street or an adjacent property. The proposed house that is located in the seaward 50-foot RPA is in orange, and the proposed deck and patio in this maroon color, and the proposed driveway that does fall within the landward 50-foot RPA here in yellow. They had previously proposed 2 infiltration basins as well, and this dashed black line was to represent the 60-foot setback that was reduced to 30 feet. On this next slide, you will see the new proposed site plan. Again, the edge of wetlands are located here and highlighted in green. The limits of clearing, now this more squiggled line. The 50-foot resource protection area, again, is this red line, and the 100-foot here. Again, here is the proposed 550 square foot house and driveway, of which fall within the seaward 50-foot RPA, and the portion of the driveway that is within the landward 50-foot RPA. Again, that 60-foot setback now reduced to 30 feet, and a proposed BMP on the lot. Again, the applicants did come before the Chesapeake Bay Board in June 2022. Since that meeting, let me go back a slide, the applicants have decreased the size of the proposed driveway from 942 square feet to 555 square feet. The location of the house was also adjusted slightly to accommodate for this new driveway. Additionally, the applicants decreased the size of the proposed deck. Originally 140 square feet, the new deck is a 20 square foot Juliet balcony. Total reductions in the RPA from the first submittal of this proposal equate to 607 square feet. The applicants gained approval from the Board of Zoning Appeals in May 2022 to move the building setback from 60 feet to 30 feet in an effort to move the dwelling further from the wetlands. That is where this black dash line comes from. It was originally 30 feet further into this property. Required mitigation for this amount of impervious impacts equals 3 planting units, which is 3 canopy trees, 6 understory trees, and 9 shrubs. The applicants have also proposed a bioretention best management practice, or BMP, on the new site that will treat water from all proposed impervious cover in this project. According to calculations provided by the applicant, which are located here, the proposed bioretention is oversized to treat the amount of impervious for the proposed construction. Staff will also require the recordation of an affidavit in the Williamsburg-James City County Courthouse to ensure that any future owners of the property will be aware of the RPA encroachment that will occur as a result of this proposal. Along with the calculations for this best management practice does come a side view. On the site plan that I showed earlier, you'll also see a series of orange lines that go around the house. These are catch basins with piping to take the water from those particular areas in the northern side of the property back to the bioretention located in the south, which will then outfall down this slope towards these wetlands on site. This is a house view and some site photographs, very similar to last month's. Beyond these sets of trees is where the topography drops off into the wetland basin. Here, standing near the road, looking backwards towards the lot where the majority of the house will be constructed. And here in blue, you can see some flagging. That is for the house itself. Standing at the top of the slope, looking down into the wetlands, you can see there is a stream that runs through with floodplain adjacent wetlands that come up to the toe of this slope. Looking back towards the area that the bioretention will be constructed or is proposed in, you can see Hickory Signpost Road in the rear of this photo. Another site photograph with stakes indicating house location. Staff has evaluated the application and exception requests for the construction of a single-family dwelling. This application meets the ordinance conditions in sections 23-11 and 23-14 and should be heard by the board because the construction of a single-family dwelling or of this single-family dwelling extends into the seaward 50-foot RPA. Board may grant exceptions to section 23-7 if the application meets the following 5 conditions. The exception request is the minimum necessary to afford relief. Granting the exception will not confer upon the applicants any special privileges denied by Chapter 23, Chesapeake Bay Preservation of the James City County Code to other property owners similarly situated in the vicinity. The exception request will be in harmony with the purpose and intent of Chapter 23 of the James City County Code and is not of substantial detriment to water quality. The exception request is not based on conditions or circumstances that are self-created or self-imposed, nor does the request arise from conditions or circumstances either permitted or non-conforming that are related to adjacent parcels. Reasonable and appropriate conditions are imposed which will prevent the exception request from causing a degradation of water quality. Staff has reviewed the application and exception request and has determined the impacts associated with the proposal to be major based on the impacts to the seaward 50-foot RPA. Should the board wish to approve this request, staff recommends the following conditions be incorporated into the approval. The applicants must obtain all other necessary federal, state, and local permits as required for the project. All plantings required for the bioretention BMP shall not count towards the required plantings. The submittal of a mitigation plan equating to 3 planting units, which is 3 canopy trees, 6 understory trees, and 9 shrubs, be submitted to the Stormwater and Resource Protection Division prior to the issuance of a building permit. That a surety of $2,500 be submitted in a form acceptable to the James City County Attorney's Office to guarantee the mitigation, plantings, and installation of the bioretention BMP. That an affidavit be recorded in the Williamsburg James City County Courthouse prior to the issuance of the building permit. That this exception request approval shall become null and void if construction has not begun by July 13th, 2023, and that written requests for an extension to this exception shall be submitted to the Stormwater and Resource Protection Division no later than June 1st, 2023, which is 6 weeks prior to the expiration date. Thank you very much, and be happy to answer any questions that you have at this time.
Questions for the staff?
Trevor, does the county typically require an operation and maintenance plan for these on-lot BMPs?
Generally not. They're reviewed.
I bring it up only because while infiltration is a proven alternative, they also do require maintenance, and over time they pores clog up. So
Certainly.
Any other questions for the staff? Okay, at this time, I'm going to open the public hearing. Would the applicant like to come forward and address the board?
Good evening, members of the board. Chase Grog with Land Tech Resources again, 7657 Turlington Road, Toano, Virginia. I wanted to start with our original thought after last month was to go to August meeting, but as soon as we were informed that there was not an August meeting, we worked diligently with the homeowner as well as county staff. Thank you guys for to bring it back to this month. One of the big topics from last month was the soil on site. I was not aware at the time, but the owner had hired ECS to do a soils report, which actually indicates that up on that knoll for the building site that it's silty sand soil, which is good for infiltration, as well as we went out there to where the BMP is going to be, and there's good sandy stuff to 3 feet. It's not all the way down. You do hit some clay stuff, that would not be as good, but there would be some infiltration through the first media layer of the BMP, which is why that BMP has an under drain under it. It's different than the previously designed infiltrations that just rely on the soil itself. That BMP treats the water. Some of it infiltrates, the rest of it goes through the under drain in the bottom. The next thing I'd like to do is kind of go through the denial comments provided by Mr. Gussman for the board to county staff. So the first one, the exception request is minimum necessary to afford relief. To address that, we've provided a 35% reduction of impervious on an already small lot, which is just under 700 square feet. 695 square feet of impervious was removed. That was done by reducing the deck to where there's now not going to be any sort of support for the little deck on the backside. It's just going to be what's called a Juliet balcony where you can just walk out on it. It'll be anchored back to the house, so there's no actual support on the backside of that, no structure on the hillside that I know was of a concern, which allowed us to bring the clearing in on that backside a lot closer to the house. Also, the oversized driveway is of a concern, so to alleviate that, we replaced it with a 2-car parking area with a turnaround in front of the house so that they'd be able to pull in and then turn around and get back out onto the street safely. The second one, the exception request, will be in harmony with the purpose and intent of Chapter 23 of the James City County Code and is not substantial detriment to water quality. Again, we did this through the reduction in clearing, about a 10% reduction. Again, we weren't clearing very much to start with, so adding the BMP to the south, but most of that reduction came in the back and was able to take us away from those wetlands and try and remain a good, healthy distance away. And all of the water on the site, based on roof gutters, as well as a catch basin on the backside of the driveway, will direct all of the water to that BMP so it can get treated and released into the wetlands that way. And then the final one, reasonable and appropriate conditions can be imposed which will prevent the exception request from causing degradation to water quality. Kind of, goes right back down the same lines with that BMP. So the BMP was designed under current VRRM. It's a VRRM spreadsheet, which is used on all of the commercial sites. It's the standard for stormwater management in Virginia. That was designed that way per those design regulations. That BMP only needs to be 100 square feet. It's currently proposed at 150 square feet to allow more water to be able to go into it during a good storm. During a bigger event, water would go over the backside, but with it being 1.5 times bigger, it's going to do a way better job of containing a lot of the water on site, infiltrating it, treating it, and releasing it at a slower rate back onto the property. Mr. Rowley, I don't know. I'll have to get up with county staff. I don't have an issue trying to work in some sort of maintenance. I don't know if there's a way for county that there's any long term, but I'm happy to prepare a document that could go along with a plot plan or something.
You understand, it's just.
Yep.
Homeowner.
No, yeah. 5 years down the road, there's different items that need to be taken care of, and it'll stop functioning. It will not do what it's supposed to. So I'm again happy to do that. The last thing I'd like to do is Ms. Marcano, the owner, unfortunately not able to make it to either of these meetings, but she provided me with something that she wanted me to read. To the Chesapeake Bay board members, good evening. I'm Sonny Marcano. I'm respectfully asking the board to please grant me to build a small dwelling on the land in which my family has owned for over 60 years. As of today, there are still several family members whom reside on Hickory Signpost Road. I do not wish to destroy or damage the wetlands, only to protect it as we clearly illustrated in 2005 for the property next door. We made it possible for a family to enjoy and embrace the beauty of it. I also would love for me and my family to be able to come back home and enjoy the beauty of it as well. Again, I'm asking respectfully for the approval of our proposed plans. Thank you. Sincerely, Sonny Marcano. I don't know if you remember from last board's hearing, but the lot to the right was actually another piece of land that they owned and previously had developed and then sold. I'm not sure of the exact circumstances there, but I'm happy to answer any questions you guys have. And thank you guys for seeing this case again.
Any questions? Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak on this issue? Okay, well, you got to state your name and address again, too.
Gary and Liz Bowling, 4676 Hickory Signpost Road. We come here before you still in opposition to this proposed exception. I understand they've done some things to mitigate the issues of the first denial of this, but I just don't think that this property is still an unbuildable lot. It was created as a vestigial lot years and years ago before any of this existed, and I reiterate, building a house and parking lot completely within the 50-foot seaward side of the RPA.
And do they realize that they have to put a well on this property?
We don't see where the
There's
well
no,
is.
there's not any city water coming through there. This is, everybody on our road has a well. And,
Didn't see where that has to
we
go.
didn't see it on the plans anywhere. You know, as I stated before, our swamp is very fragile, and there's more light coming in all the time. I really hope that it doesn't happen, because I really want to preserve this beauty, and we have so many people that enjoy just seeing it, and I just see it slowly, especially with this structure, which does not go with anything on our road. You know, most of the homes are craftsman-style homes on our road, and there's just so many negatives
The
here.
construction of it during the period of doing this is going to really
Be a
congest
nightmare.
that road. That road is a very tight curve into that one-lane bridge, and we have issues every day with this situation. And you're going to be putting construction vehicles on this road and blocking the road. And you
A
have,
piece of property up the road. We had to, no
Yeah.
flagmen, they had, trucks in the road. Our road needs a great repair on Hickory Signpost. They narrowed it down.
We appreciate your comments,
Yeah.
but keep in mind, we can't address traffic issues.
I
We
understand
can't,
that.
when we make our decision, we can't consider traffic. We can't consider, does it fit into the character of the neighborhood? But anything you have specifically that impacts water quality, any comments about, its impact on water quality, that's what we're looking at.
And I noticed he had his soils
Yeah, well, that's
worked on, or, our foundation. And down on that wetland area, I can't believe there wouldn't be issues down the road with that. So I don't know,
that's another
that's another
issue,
issue.
construction. So
Yeah, that's, like I
so
said,
anyway, we still
thank you for your
stand
time.
opposed. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for coming out and giving us your comments. Would anyone else like to come forward?
On 4638 Hickory Signpost Road, right up the road from that. Couple things. I'm not trying to be mean, but this is just idiotic to put a house there, in my opinion. My granddaddy and my great-granddaddy built the house I live in now, about 52 or 54. I bought it probably about 27, 28 years ago. What gets me is, after Isabel, I got a letter from the Chesapeake Bay. I got a little over an acre right on Hickory Signpost Road. I am quite a ways from the creek, and you're telling me that they're going to be able to build a house within, from here to that column there from the creek, and they can cut all the trees down, do all the landscaping they want. And I got a letter back after Isabel that I can't touch my yard. So if you get a good thunderstorm, because I've been on that road for about 52 years, you get a good thunderstorm, that bridge, the water is to the bridge. So building a house there, number one, is just absolutely, in my opinion, idiotic. You can't tell me how it's not in the wetlands, it's not going to affect the water quality. Also, they brought up, Sissy and Gary, about having a well, okay? You've got to have a certain space from a well to a water source to a septic tank to a sewer line to another house. Now, Bab's well is just a bad spot. I'm not against people building houses, but this is a horrible spot for a house, and I'm totally against it.
Can you
And
re-
also,
can-
excuse me, I'm sorry.
I wanted to say, could you repeat that? Could you elaborate on that comment about the water level coming up to the bridge level?
But during Hurricane Floyd, that bridge washed totally out, and it was out for months. And if you get a good thunderstorm, that water is up to the bottom of the bridge. And now, this letter that this gentleman had from whoever owns it, when they built Bab's house, the same thing was said. It was for a family member. They wanted to move back in. Well, as soon as they built the house, they sold it. It's basically a spec house. So, no offense, but this letter is just a bunch of malarkey. A whole lot farther from the creek than they are. So that's my big beef. And I just think it's a very bad place. You're in the middle of a swamp. Plain and simple.
Okay,
Okay? Thanks for letting me talk.
thank you.
I'm Post Road. I'm right the adjacent lot. I'm the house that they had built previously. I also am objecting to a house being built there. Same arguments we gave last time. And as Mac mentioned about the water coming up to the bridge, I provided pictures of that last time, and that was just after a heavy storm. That was not even after a hurricane. Going to be planted in response to the building. I understand that trees can absorb up to 150 gallons of water a day, and if we're clearing a lot of those trees off the lot and putting a building there, that's not going to help with the wetlands and the water absorption. And I also am not understanding why we're even considering something that's 100% in the RPA, not 50%, not 40%, 100%. I mean, this is supposed to be protected area. And so I don't understand why we keep coming back trying to build on this property. It's the wetlands. We need to protect it. Again, I'm looking to you guys as the preservers of our wetlands. And again, anything you can legally do, I'm asking you to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak on this issue? Okay, at this time I'll close the public hearing and open it up for discussion among the board.
I think Mr. Grogg has done a good job to reconsider the first proposal, and it is a low area. There's a lot of low areas in James City County that have floods. It is what it is. I can sympathize with the neighbors, and I can sympathize with the bridge times myself. It is a hard nut to crack here, and we're on sitting here making decisions for people that pay taxes on property and own their property for years and years. And
I have some concerns about this BMP. I mean, I've looked at 1 million BMPs over the years, and and most of them I feel really good about. But boy, I don't know if this BMP is going to work. Yeah, it might meet the design criteria, but it's taking a lot of water from all the way around and routing it around the house, and there's no requirement to maintain it. I can see in a heavy storm this thing blowing out or failing, and it's not. I don't think it's going to work. I think in a couple of years it's going to fail, and we're going to just be and the water's going to all be going. And this lot is in a terrible location. It's going to have impact. It's going to impact water quality in the wetlands. I feel very strongly about that. I can't support it.
I was not here for the June meeting, but I did go back and review the June meeting, and also I did go by the site as well to physically look at the site. I drove by there and stopped and got out and looked at the site. So after hearing all of the board's concerns at the June meeting, I too kind of share those same concerns about the potential negative impact to the water quality. I certainly share those concerns, and it's, as Mr. Waltrip said, this is a tough nut to crack. I mean, property, people that own property in the county and that pay taxes. I'm not against, development and building, but certainly there has to be a reasonable approach as far as, how it's going to impact the water quality.
I think if my stand on it would be is decisions made in there where the BM or quality would stay. We are going to have floods. It doesn't make any difference. We're going to have floods. I have it at my house, and we all are going to have it. So we have to deal with those situations. I do think that the redesign on it, he did a good job on that for what we have. And
I agree with you to a degree that I appreciate the effort to put in the infiltration and to further reduce the impervious cover on the lot. But I am also mindful of the comments made by the protestants. And given the proximity to the wetlands and the amount of encroachment within the 50-foot RPA, I tend to maintain my concern that the proposal is not in harmony with the intent of the Chesapeake Bay Act and has the potential to impact water quality.
Now, I wasn't at the June meeting either, but I did review the reporting. I also visited the site prior to the June meeting, and I have to say that my impression was it was not buildable, given the fact that it was completely in the RPA. But I was anxious to see what some of the considerations were in terms of putting together a proposal. And, last month there were some issues, and appreciate you addressing those today. But I'm still having a hard time even seeing with those revisions that this is a site that's going to not have issues with water quality.
Okay. Can we have a motion?
I'm going to go ahead and propose a motion to deny the exception request for Chesapeake Bay Board case CBPA 220082 at 4816 Hickory Signpost Road.
Okay, we have a motion to deny. So a yes vote turns this project down. Mr. Wilson, can we have a roll call, please?
Yes, sir. And again, a positive affirmative vote is a vote to deny. Mr. Roadley?
Yes.
Mr. Waltrip?
yes.
Mr. O'Brien?
Yes.
Mr. May?
Yes.
Mr. Gussman?
Yes, okay. Project's denied. Thank you for coming out. Thank you for putting work into it. That concludes our public hearings for tonight. Mr. Wilson, do we have any board considerations or matters of special privilege?
Mr. Chair, there is no, or there will not be any Wetlands Board or Chesapeake Bay Board meetings for the month of August. Enjoy your time off. And if I may be so bold, Mr. Gussman, may I announce that this will be your last meeting?
Okay, that's fine.
Didn't mean to steal your thunder.
That's okay.
But since there is no August meeting, this is officially your last meeting. I want to thank you on behalf of staff for all your years of service. And either in September or October, I would request that you come back to this board for a presentation, please.
Absolutely. And of course, I want to thank all the staff. You guys have been great to work with. I really appreciate the effort you guys have put in for this board. So thank you very much for your hard work. Okay, if there are no other matters, we are adjourned.